David Fredrickson's figure plant launched a piece of chicken into space to sell soy sauce. But that's just one of many experiential marketing stunts that they've pulled off. They've recreated Rivendell from Lord of the Rings in a forest, recreated slums out of Kenya for Nike, and created an underwater set for Chick-fil-A. David doesn't just build environments, he turns stories into experiences. In this conversation, David lays out how he turned his crazy ideas into unforgettable experiences and it built a thriving business around it. In case you're new here, my name is Mo, and this is the Mo Method, where we talk to creatives who have turned their passions into professions. Without further ado, here's David Fredrickson.
My name is David Fredrickson, and I'm the owner and founder of Figure Plant, and we're a design and fabrication company based up in Portland, Oregon. And we basically build environments and experiences. Some in the permanent world, corporate environments, retail experiences, and then a lot of stuff in the temporary world, activations, installations, brand promotions, things like that.
So how did you get into this? Because it's a very unique sort of skill set and company. It's very cool. And I think a lot of people interact with these installations on a fairly regular basis, sometimes on the small scale at a mall and sometimes on a much larger scale.
Yeah.
How did it all start?
The question of, or answering that question of how it all started, it depends how far back I go in history, and we may have talked about this before, but I think for me, the curiosity for the built environment or how things work in this world kind of started when I was a little kid. My dad was always doing renovations and additions on our house. I had a neighbor who was kind of a genius level, like inventor. He did like HVAC and solar systems, grew his own amazing vegetable garden of like hybrid vegetables, that he invented. And so there were some influences on me then, and that kind of sparked a curiosity. And then I used to, one of the specific things is I was really, for a while, really into like lawnmower engines and trying to make go-karts. And I took apart a lawnmower engine in my bedroom, probably when I was like age 10. And remember like dumping the gasoline in a little cottage cheese container and coming back an hour later and the bottom of the cottage cheese container was melted away and gas soaked into the carpet, much to my parents' dismay. But I was just really fascinated by the fact that like, wow, that happened. Gasoline melted this thing that I thought was, impervious. So kind of started then that early curiosity around things and environments and machines. And then I got involved in the theater world, really in junior high and then into high school, building environments, building sets, doing lighting, performing, acting, in shows. And I carried that on into college, became a theater major, just because I enjoyed it, and it kind of drew me in. I did a lot of performing through college, but also designing and building, and that was really where my early passion was, and it really continued into that, like creating environments. So yeah, that was really the start of it.
So how did you kind of transfer from the theater into this more, more niche and, they're both experiential, I guess, but this is kind of creating the experiences as opposed to just participating in it.
Right. Yeah, they're totally experiential. I mean, I think the way it happened for me was, got my degree in theater in college, knew from, I don't know when in that journey, but that though I enjoyed acting, I didn't want to pursue that as a career, move to LA and, get a job waiting tables and compete with all the other folks doing the same thing, trying to get discovered. So I went into professional theater after school as a set builder, carpenter, welder, prop maker, and learned in that environment how to do a couple things. One, how to build most anything, because everything in a stage play is custom built, right? Because a chair at a dining room table isn't just a chair; it's also serves in the fight scene where I pick it up and, smash it over your head, and then it's got to be put back together after the matinee show for the
Right.
evening show. So everything's special, everything's custom built, and it's all in service of, a script and a director's, um, version iteration of that script, and a designer's vision that supports that script. So it's all about, visual storytelling supporting some sort of a story, of an agenda. And so I did that for quite a while. Then I got into the feature film world, doing the same thing, building environments for movies. And then, I don't know, around the turn of the century, I love to say that, moved from the Pacific Northwest down to the Bay Area, thinking I was going to pursue a film career. And I didn't. I was young and I didn't really know to research and find out that there was no film business happening in the Bay Area. So I moved down there, kind of built my own shop and started building items and, environments for designers and decorators and architects. And then at some point I went to Burning Man, one of the biggest experiential events probably in the world, met a prop stylist who was in the commercial print photography world, and said, hey, you ought to meet my agent because they'd love to have somebody who builds environments and things for commercial print photography. And that's about when Figure Plant was born under a different name. So, the interesting there is that it's the same thing. It's all theater. It's about creating an environment that's in support of some sort of storytelling. And in that case, it was around promoting a brand or a product, or a place.
Yeah. So how would you differentiate, kind of the set design and the what you were creating for theater versus what you're doing, now with Figure Plant, where it's more, as in with a theater, it's a very controlled environment, right?
Yeah.
Once you start opening it to the public, anything could happen.
Oh, yeah.
So how do you kind of, what are the differences in approach? How do you kind of,
Yeah, that's a great question. You're right. I mean, the theater is a very, very controlled environment. You generally have the audience in one place and the environment, in another. Sometimes they're very close together. Sometimes they're a little further apart. Yeah, the the experiential stuff, like it's in and amongst the audience. So if we're creating some sort of a promotional item for a brand at the Super Bowl, like we just did a project for an agency and a big brand, basically handing out product, driving around the streets of New Orleans, delivering product with custom tricycles. So in that case, it's like, okay, this thing is going to be, it's a custom built, kind of never been done before in this iteration object that's going to move around the public on difficult streets. And so we got to think about, like, okay, how does it interact with the environment? How does it interact with people, consumers, public? And that's true with all of it. I mean, the thing about experiential, which is one word to use for what we do, is, experiences are, I mean, the definition of the word, right? We're experiencing a thing, an object, an environment. And so we're in and amongst it. We can see it, feel it, taste it, smell it. And that's what's really cool about it. And that's what's, I think, cool about kind of the difference of what we're doing now versus theater. It's so much more immersive.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's sort of like the process when somebody, either a client or somebody within your company has an idea, how do you kind of go from that initial idea of, I want to do, for example, let's just take one of your things that you did do, the SoyVe. You launched the piece of chicken into space. So how's it go from kind of somebody's like, we're going to cook chicken in space, to actually getting it done?
Well, it tends to, for us, it tends to start with our client, who's either a brand, a corporate company, or maybe an agency, and they've got some sort of idea, right? And so they're trying to, in the case of an agency, which that SoyVe one was an agency that called us. They've put together some creative idea to promote a product. In this case, it was SoyVe, who wanted to break into the Southeast United States sauce market. because they'd penetrated pretty well in other markets throughout the country, but not in the Southeast where sauces are big, right? So the agency conceived this idea of a video series, kind of promotional series of videos before an event, and then they wanted to take chicken that was marinated in the product, send it into space, cook it on the way, bring it back, and eat it and taste it, right? Kind of a what's going to get people's attention and draw a
Yeah.
lot of interest and fun to this brand. So they literally called us. We've worked with them many times before. They called us and said, hey, we got this project. We want to cook chicken in space, and we're talking to a former NASA engineer about it. But you guys are a trusted vendor of ours, and we just thought we'd see what you think. So it's and we of course said, yeah, we can do that. We can figure that out. For us, that's that's a part of what's in our name. The figure part of Figure Plant really is about taking interesting, sometimes never been done before, oftentimes challenging ideas and make them happen. Figure them out and make them happen. So we said, yeah, we can do that. It's we like to say it's not rocket science, but it actually was rocket science. uh, so yeah, that's they come to us with that idea, and we say, yep, we'll figure it out, and then we embark. Then it's a lot of kind of the next big ingredient is curiosity, right? It's like asking questions, learning about really what they're trying to do, because there's so many different ways. Just like in the old theater days, there's so many different designs for a set, for a script. There's so many different translations of a script. There's a million different ways to skin the cat, many different ways to approach any project. So we like to get really curious and learn about as much as we can about what's trying to be done.
Yeah. So going back to like the beginning of Figure Plant, so you started, it was just you, initially you were doing it by yourself?
Yeah, started out with me. I decided to, so I went from the theater business to the feature film business. I soon realized that the feature film lifestyle was not really for me. Working 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, away from home, on location, super fun and exciting and some great projects, but it wasn't really a long-term sustainable thing for me. So yeah, moved down to the Bay Area and opened up my own shop and just started, got representation from an agency down there, and I started building environments and objects for commercial print photography. So this was, this is 1998, pre-Photoshop, pre-Creative Suite days, when every environment for an ad, a magazine ad or a billboard, was created, was made. So we would, if it was a room, like a bathroom, for a bathroom products company, we would build the bathroom walls and toilets and sinks, and basically make a fake bathroom for a 1, 2, 3 day photo shoot. So
Yeah.
everything had to be brought in and made.
Wow. So like what are some of like the I mean, I'm sure there's a lot, but what are some of the biggest challenges with kind of starting your own studio? Because and it's not a small feat, especially it seems like you've kind of built it over the years to a really large not, I don't even call it a business. It's more than a business. Like it's a production house, I guess.
Yeah.
So what were some of like the biggest challenges in kind of like starting your own, I don't know, studio, whatever you want to call it?
It's a great question. I mean, the challenges that I realize now I didn't know at the time. I mean, I was kind of young and idealistic and naive enough to just think, I can do this myself. I mean, I worked in some environments that weren't particularly, I would say, encouraging, or there's a lot of in the world, there's a lot of management out of kind of fear and intimidation, right? And so, hey, if you don't like this job, then go do something else. And so I realized after working in a few environments like that I wanted something different. I felt like I could create an environment for creative professionals that was safe, fostered creativity, independence, relied on trust and respect, for each other, So that was kind of the motivation. I'm like, I'm just going to do this myself. I didn't know how hard it is to start a business. If
Yeah.
I'd known that, I may not have done it. So, uh,
Is you're better off the naivety kind of helped you.
yeah, it's yeah, I just started doing it, and I just started doing it myself, and doing projects that I could build myself in my own small, like 400 square foot shop, very basic shop, and then as it grew, and as my reputation um, you know increased, and got out there, that I could do a lot of different things. More work started to happen, and I started to bring in some different team members to help me accomplish the work. So it grew from me to, me and one or two other people, to me and a handful. I had a couple business partners on and off for a minute, through the process. And yeah, now it involves, you know, a lot of administration and project management and business development and marketing and, legal.
Yeah.
And it's a whole
Yeah.
whole different thing than I had imagined at that time.
Do you still kind of get to get your hands on every project, or at this point, do you kind of you're taking more of a, you know, position where you don't even have time to get your hands on the projects?
Unfortunately, it's the latter, in many
Yeah.
ways. And it's that classic kind of entrepreneurial, conundrum. You start a business because you're really good at something, thinking, well, I'll just do this myself, and I won't have to, work for somebody else who I don't like or don't get along with or don't see eye to eye with. Um, what many entrepreneurs, I think, don't realize is that it mean it means they're going to not be doing those things that they're good at, and they're going to be running a business. So so no, I don't get my hands dirty anymore, really, at all. Um, Unfortunately, occasionally, very, very occasionally, do I do that. I'll have some input on approach, and ideas. I like to bring that to the table, but basically, I've got a team of people who are even better at that stuff than I am. Uh, so um, so now mostly stay out of the shop, and I'm working on business development and marketing and strategy and, growth
Yeah.
of the business.
Yeah. So as you were kind of working in the space throughout your career, but I guess um, was there like ever a point where you felt that like you felt like this wasn't going anywhere, you wanted to give up and kind of just go get like a whatever, become an accountant, or it always kind of worked pretty well for you?
Oh no, there were many times. I would say there still are. I mean, it's tough. I mean, entrepreneurship and running a business is not easy, and especially in a day of technology when we do, we're building physical environments in a digital era, so
Yeah.
in some ways it kind of gets harder and harder, and the sweet spot for us keeps moving. Um, and we keep, moving with that. Um, so yeah, there was one particular time when I was in the Bay Area for, I don't know, what was it, 2000 or 98 to 2007, so 9 years, 10 years, and then I moved my home back up to Portland, Oregon, where I am now, where I had gone to school and worked for a couple of years, thinking that I was going to leave the business there. I had a partner that was going to buy in. I was burnt out, working way too many hours. So he was going to run it, and I was going to change careers entirely, get into something totally different. And then the 2008, you know, crash happened, and he couldn't buy in for various reasons, and I ended up having to get back in it, and I was commuting down from Portland to the Bay 4 days a week. Had a 6-year-old and a brand new baby, and left my wife here for 4 days every week
Wow.
for, I don't know, 6 months. And that was
Wow.
hard. That was that was definitely a challenging time. So yeah, there are a lot of times, grass is always greener, right? Like
Yeah.
um, many times, and I've thought, what am I doing? Why am I still
Yeah.
doing this? But but I keep doing it, and it's the cool thing. One of the cool things about it is that every day and every project and every client is totally different.
Hmm.
You know,
Keeps
so
it fresh.
keeps it fresh. Yeah, it's Um, I don't know if I'd be happy just making a widget over and over. I
Yeah.
know most of my team would not be,
Yeah.
We love
Yeah.
the creative problem solving, the new challenge, the phone call of like, we want to shoot chicken into space,
Right.
are you in?
Right.
Like, heck yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's what makes it exciting. It's in general, like, one thing that my teacher had taught me early on is that design is all about solving problems.
Hmm.
Um, and like that in a lot of ways is the most fun part about it. Like it's high stress, because like you're trying to do something that's not working, and there's the time crunch and all these things. But
Yeah.
I don't know, like for me, I kind of thrive on that. Like it's when you're in it, you're like, oh, I hate this, but then you finish, you're like, oh my god, that was so thrilling.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. I mean, I've always loved that. I've always loved that kind of problem solving. And that's what we do. That's who we are, is we're problem solvers. Um,
Yeah,
problem solvers for, the built environment or a brand, again, a brand promotion or, some sort of an object or experience.
yeah. So let me ask you, like, how do you kind of strike the balance between intuition and like going with your gut versus kind of like, okay, like here's the plan, and we're gonna do exactly A, B, and C. Because as much as you try and plan, there's always gonna be things that go wrong that you kind of have to ideate on the fly. So how do you kind of strike that balance?
Boy, it's great. I mean, I think it's just keeping both of those present. We have really well developed processes and procedures for developing an idea from that first concept phase through an installation. Uh, so very, very prescribed, documented process that has developed over, about a quarter century of being in business that we know works for bringing an idea to fruition. Um, and then, the gut intuition part you're talking about, I think is really about relying on the team and the talent, the, incredible, wealth of information that and experience that we have amongst our team from, our our sales team, our estimation project managers, people in the shop, everybody's everybody's been doing this kind of thing for a long time, and so um, we all have a good gut and good intuition around stuff. So we try to bring that in then to that process,
Hmm.
and
You
honor
kind of
it.
like leave room for that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's so creative. It's such a creative, iterative process. Um, that's different every time. Like again, if we were making a widget, then I think it could just be you don't necessarily need that gut. Maybe in other aspects of a widget making business, certainly, following market trends and client
Right.
needs and um, things like that. But for us, since every project is totally different every time, then yeah, we gotta listen to that gut. Like, oh man, I something telling me that like we should use a different material, or I don't like the way that screw is biting into that piece of wood, like literally little details like that. And what's that intuition based on? Oh, it's probably a past experience, last week, last month, or a decade ago where we used the wrong screw.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
silly example, but uh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's that
I'm
balance.
curious to circle back on something you kind of touched upon before, and that was you talked about how kind of uh, working on physical environments in a more and more digital age, and how you kind of have adjusted throughout the years. Like how have you kind of adjusted and pivoted throughout the years, and to
Yeah,
keep things fresh, and
yeah,
especially nowadays, like with with social media, where everything has gotten so sensationalized, where it's like to make a impression, like you really gotta send chicken into space.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, my belief, uh, kind of, I guess, yeah, one of the core beliefs is that, as human beings, um, we're social animals. We pretty much require live social interaction to survive as a species, right? We haven't figured out a digital solution for procreation yet. So I kind of think
Give it some time,
it might happen. It's probably around the corner, but I mean, we're close. But I think that that generally speaking, the um, as we become more isolated, as we become more digitally dominated, um, there's an even greater need for social interaction. People need to be with other people. It's just how we're wired, I think.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think that as a strong believer in that, I keep looking for how to be involved in that kind of experience. So, you know, yeah, so social media and the power of that for brands and businesses is undeniable. But a lot of what brands are doing is they're creating live experiences that people are then sharing. So it's like on social media, people are talking about their live interactions with other people.
Yeah.
So you can't, I think you have to have that live interaction, that live experiencing of the world, of people around us, of the environment. That's what has an impact. And then yeah, we can tell stories. I mean, we've been telling stories since, the race began, sitting around a fire and,
Right.
telling stories. So,
Right.
it's the same thing, and here we are back at storytelling, right?
Right. New mediums is all that changes, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the Museum of Ice Cream? I think it's called.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very much like that, where it's very much. It's funny. I remember because it opened. What was it? Maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah, about 10 years ago, I think. Yeah.
Something like that.
Hmm.
And it was funny because it was like this experiential museum that was created and optimized for social media. It was like,
Yeah.
come here, have fun and get a lot of, Instagram worthy photos, which is an interesting business model. And it clearly it worked,
It worked, and it continues to work. Otherwise, brand. I mean, I don't think there's a brand promotion kind of experiential installation project that we do that doesn't have that in mind. Because if you're trying to influence a large number of people, maybe they're customers, consumers. Um, in this connected world that we have, uh, unless you're a tiny tiny brand, you got to be talking to a larger audience, and you can have the biggest, most fabulous experience, ever, but you're still only going to talk to without social media. You're only going to talk to a small number of that audience, right? Take like I don't know, music festivals, music events, you've got, maybe 1,000 to whatever, 30, 40, 50,000 people. That's great, but generally brands are trying to reach further than that. So if at that music festival you create some really cool, centerpiece object or stage facade or, uh, brand environment elsewhere, then people there at the environment, at the show are going to experience it, talk about it, and get excited about it, and then they're going to post about it because that's how we now,
Yeah.
share our stories.
Yeah.
So it's, any of these environments that are created have to be, I think, if you're trying to reach that large audience, they got to be shareable. They got to grab that attention so people want to tell stories because, the best advertising, the best marketing is a friend telling you about something, right? Like,
Right. Absolutely.
Somebody says, "Oh my God, have you seen, the latest, this latest movie?" Right? Like, you're gonna go see it. A friend is like, "Oh God, it was so good, you gotta go see it."
Right. Right.
Whereas-
Even if you saw the trailer, it didn't catch your attention, but
yeah, yeah, but a
that,
friend is like, "Oh, you're gonna love it."
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's like real.
Yeah.
That has
Yeah. No, I've always loved the experiential, kind of these sorts of things. Like when I was a kid, there's a place I grew up in Baltimore. There was this place called Port Discovery, and it was one of these like big like children's museums
Yeah,
where it's like very interactive
yeah,
and I still remember to this day some of the exhibits that were there that were so impactful.
yeah,
Like for example, there's this one section. It was a whole section of the place where it was a house basically you'd walk through, but like the dishwasher was open. There was like you could crawl through the drain and you pop out of like in the bathroom in a different section of like all
Awesome.
these things. And like and I remember to this day, like it was so impactful
Yeah.
to partake in these
Yeah.
sort of larger than life environments.
Yeah.
There's something about it that just I don't know what it is about it that like really kind of grabs you.
Well, one of the things is that it touches more senses, you know,
Mm,
of taste, touch, sight, smell, sound, the more of those touch points on the human brain that you can access, the more indelible it's going to be, right? Like you can read about something, you can look at pictures. You could have looked at pictures of that same environment, seen what it looks like, right? But as a kid, you didn't get to crawl around in it, so you didn't have the physical touch. I'm sure there were smells. You might even be able to remember what those smells were like.
yeah.
Was the dishwasher clean and it smelled a little bit like the detergent that was used?
Right.
Was it dirty and it smelled like last night's dinner? Like
Right.
either way, smell, and memory are so close in the brain. If you can, in an experiential environment, if you can bring in all those different senses, you got a way better chance of lodging into the brain of the person experiencing it.
Yeah, definitely. No, you see that like for just as an example, like in Disney, there's a ride there called Soarin'. It's Soarin' over the U.S., something like that.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's you go up in this giant swing basically, and it's like you're hang gliding.
yeah.
And at one point, you fly over like the orange groves in California, and there's they spray a mist that has like the
Orange.
scent of oranges, and
Yeah,
it's definitely is very impactful.
yeah,
And it's interesting what you're saying about kind of hitting as many touch points as possible, and how
yeah,
the more you hit, the more you really kind of leave a lasting impression.
yeah, yeah.
Do you guys try and do that in your work? You try
For
to.
sure. Yeah. Yeah, whenever possible, if we're being tasked with, create it as impactful an environment as possible, we always push our clients to try to hit on all those senses. I mean, we did a project for the Nike Foundation years ago in which they were working on the Girl Effect, which was a program they were working on at the time to help preteen girls in third world countries improve their lives. And and they had been working with residents of the Kibera slum in Kenya, and these people live in a garbage dump. They literally have, you know, makeshift houses built on 15 feet of garbage where they pay rent. And they wanted Nike had the chance to, and there's a case study on our website you can look at. There's a video that talks about it, but they had a day with a bunch of their corporate leaders, and they wanted to have a brainstorming session with these corporate leaders to try to come up with better programs and agendas to help improve the lives of these people, especially preteen girls who really struggle, who face a lot of adversity in these communities. And so they thought about flying all these leaders to Kibera and showing them, but the optics of that were weird, like parading, corporate leaders through people's homes in a poverty-stricken community. So instead, they hired us to build a lifelike environment at the Nike campus that these people could walk through and get that same visceral sense of
Mm,
what it was like. And it was kind of like a movie set, a hyper realistic set, dirt, compost, garbage, shacks, sound. There was a tape playing of conversations in Swahili coming out of dark, dangerous feeling rooms. We turned the heat up to 95 degrees and used a lot of different things to basically replicate the smell of decomposing garbage, which is what these people's homes were built on. Um, and I tell you, it knocked their socks off. And what it did is it inspired the brainstorming session because these people got it. They're like, wait, what? This is how these people live? We gotta do something, you know. So it was really cool. I mean,
yeah.
we were told by the director of the foundation at that time, who had just been there, that one of the most profound components to that place is this acrid smell that hits you kind of right in the chest, not even in the nose,
Hmm.
but just like the heat and the decomposition. It's just like you just can't describe it. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what we wanted to recreate, was that sensation.
Wow.
Yeah.
What kind of scale was this on? Like, it must have been a large installation.
Yeah, it was probably a I don't know, 4,000 square foot room that had a path. So these leaders, they had no idea where they were going. They were just going to this next session. They're there
Mm-hmm.
for a week. They come from all over the globe, about 250 of them, and they're there for, product presentations and technology and marketing and then they knew that they were going to help, go to this brainstorm session, but they didn't really know much about it. And they walked down the hall and they opened a door and they walked into Kybera. And
Mm-hmm. Wow.
it was like a Z-shaped pathway, so you couldn't see out because, these girls in these communities face, rape and molestation just in their 10-mile walk to get fresh water. So
Yeah.
it's a dangerous, difficult place for these young girls particularly. And so they wanted that same sense of like, where am I and what's that conversation coming out of that dark room that I can't see? And
Yeah.
walked in and then once you're in it, you couldn't see the door out or the door in.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Like, one thing that for me really is fascinating about these sort of immersive experiences is kind of that point you were just talking about, that idea about, how when you're in it, you don't kind of see the way in or out, right?
Yeah.
Where you kind of, you create an environment in which you're fully in it,
Yeah.
and you almost forget that you're not actually there, right? And Disney is famous for doing this, right? I know there's a thing with in the Disney parks that if you're in any specific section, you're not able to see any other section of the park. Right? Because if you're in Tomorrowland, you can't see, the Wild West, because then it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And even the characters, they don't allow the characters to walk through.
Yeah.
And it's really it's underappreciated how much thought that takes in the planning stage of just
Oh,
how are we going to fully immerse the people into being in this moment,
yeah. So much planning, so much experience, design work, logistics. Yeah. I mean, you're right. They are the masters of it, and it goes back to, the theater that we were talking about earlier. That's what you're trying to do in a theater. That's why anything other than the set generally is black and dark and void, right? Because in
Right.
a theater, you can't necessarily, I mean, depending on the type of theater, there's many different types of theaters, from proscenium arches to outdoor stages, black box, in the round type of seating arrangements. But generally, you're trying to eliminate anything other than what supports the story being told.
Yeah.
Uh,
One time I went to Broadway. There's a show, Pippin. It's an old show and it's kind of been on and off Broadway for a number of years. And this I was I don't know, maybe 18. I wasn't a kid, but I was old enough that it's not like a distant memory.
yeah.
And I remember this one scene in the play that was very striking. Again, as somebody who enjoys kind of the behind the scenes of things,
Mm-hmm.
and there's this one scene where he's kind of getting this, like, because I think the thing with Pippin is that they kind of change up the sort of setting of it every time it comes back to Broadway.
Mm.
So in this particular, it was kind of like a circus was kind of the theme. It was kind of like he was in a circus or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's this one scene in the play where they kind of give him, I don't remember the context exactly, but they give him some sort of speech about, like, like if you want to leave, like, go kind of thing. But in the scene, in doing it, they had this whole, like, monologue, whatever, and they pulled up all the curtains, like the backstage curtains. So you just kind of saw the whole and everything, like, that goes on behind the stage, and it was very striking, first of all, for the visuals. And then also it was just fascinating to see, like, this is what's behind the Broadway play, like you don't ever get to see that. It was
Yeah.
it was so cool. It was really, and also, again, like, just for the story, it was so striking. It was like, jarring.
Yeah. Yeah. That's super cool. Yeah. It's, and it's interesting. I mean, talking back to that idea of Disney, and how masterful they are, and how every, the attention to every detail is all there, because it takes very, very little to blow the experience.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being at after I worked in theater for, 10 years or so, and then hadn't really gone back because having worked in it and been backstage and knowing what's going on, it's a little harder for me to um, buy into the illusion or the environment or whatever. And so after not going back to the theater for a long time, I went back and uh, one of the walls of the set kind of shaked when they closed the door and a doorknob
Hmm.
fell off.
Hmm.
It just completely blew it for me. I was just out, I wasn't enmeshed in the story,
Yeah.
the actors, the everything because of that one little thing.
Yeah.
And so it's like, think about Disney and every doorknob and every little tiny aspect that they're getting just right. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes an army.
Yeah. No joke. I mean, there's a whole network of like tunnels underneath, that have like how many number of employees just
Oh,
running around from A
thousands.
to B
Yeah,
managing everything. Yeah, it's
yeah. It's pretty.
I'm curious, and I hope you don't mind me asking. We don't have to get too specific, but these projects are on like such a large scale. What's sort of the price range of like when somebody comes to you with a project? Obviously, each case is different because it
Yeah.
depends on the size and scope of the project. But these projects must be very expensive to put together.
Yeah, I mean, it does vary. I mean, we work on projects anywhere from, roughly 20,000 to, a million plus. Uh,
Yeah.
so it's a huge range, and whether it's like a small influencer kit, which again is kind of you're trying to create an experience for an influencer, somebody who has an audience,
Right.
um, and it's got to be authentic, it's got to be real, it's got to create excitement, and then they're going to share it. So that's a great example of what we were talking about earlier. Those can be small, those can be 10, 20. I mean, we've spent, those can go up, depending on how many you're sending, to
Right.
hundreds of thousands. To do a big, one room environment, can be hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars, again, depending
Yeah.
on the scope of it.
And so these are mostly like obviously influencers. Then also like you mentioned Nike, so it's kind of like big corporations are coming to you to do these installations because obviously your average Joe can't just shell out $1 million to have an installation put in for.
Well, they've got to have an ROI on it, a return on investment.
Right.
So, an average Joe is, probably doesn't have that future ROI, right?
Right.
Um, so yeah, it's brands, direct, like, the big shoe companies, or, we work with Salesforce and, PepsiCo and, big companies that have the pockets uh, to try to create influence around, again, a script and agenda, buying more potato chips. We
Right.
want people to know more about Lay's potato chips, so we're gonna make some really cool vehicles at the Super Bowl that can go around and pass out those chips, and they can spend, a bunch of money because they're gonna make a bunch of money.
Right. Right.
That's the thing. It's investment. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, so we're working with either the large brands or the creative agencies that are supporting them, or we're working with an architect or a designer, or a general contractor, again, creating some sort of an environment.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious. This is more of a technical question. We've spoken about before we were recording. You had mentioned that sometimes you do temporary installations and
Mhm.
sometimes you do permanent installations.
Yeah.
What's kind of the difference in approach? Obviously, they're very different.
Hmm.
And so, how do you kind of approach those two projects? What are the similarities and what are the differences?
Yeah, that's great. The similarities are that, again, it's kind of about experience, right? We're creating an experience. So whether it's right now we're doing excuse me, a bunch of work for in the Deschutes Public Library System. Deschutes County is Central Oregon, and they are building 2 new libraries and renovating 5, and we're creating early childhood development centers in these libraries. So it's about creating a learning experience, a learning environment for kids. So yeah, so we're trying to influence uh, a set of people. As
Yeah.
kids, we're trying to give them better, more enjoyable, more memorable, long-lasting access to learning, and particularly in a library, books, making it exciting to go to the library and get books. Um, or Super Bowl activation, yeah, making, uh, vehicles to pass out, uh, product, for tasting. So we're trying to influence um, human beings in some way. So that's one similarity. The differences are there's so many differences. So I guess, yeah, back to the similarities, it's all about supporting that creative concept.
Hmm.
um, and somebody's vision of it. So like, we're working with a designer or a producer to bring this vision to life. Same.
Yeah.
Differences can be like time, largely. The temporary stuff, the brand promotion, the experiential events are fast because they're market driven, right? So something might happen in the market and a brand is like, okay, we gotta launch a new product fast. So it happens very, very quickly.
And what's quick? Like weeks, months?
Weeks can be weeks. Yeah, yeah. Those projects typically, 6 months is a very long time. They're typically,
Hmm.
you know, uh, like literally 2 weeks, 1 week sometimes. A brand recently came to us and said, "I need these product displays. We got a show next Monday."
Wow.
You know, go. That's
And
really
you're making it from scratch.
from scratch. From scratch.
Wow.
There might be design. In this case, there are some rough designs. Um, so yeah, it can be excruciatingly fast. Or and there's so many steps in the chain of that. An agency creating a concept for a brand around a particular event like Super Bowl, and they're developing those concepts, and things are changing with the brand. Their brand identities might be shifting. Colors, fonts, products, agencies trying to adjust to those while they're trying to create this great experience that's going to, promote the brand. So it's like delays can trickle down and to us to where then,
Yeah.
then it's like, okay, hurry up and go.
Yeah.
And that's just part of it. Whereas with the more permanent environments, it's much more prescribed. If we're building, a piece in a library that's going to last forever, there are codes, there are material concerns and areas of focus, safety, longevity, finishes. It's all, since it's going to last for a very long time and a lot of people are going to interact with it over years. Everybody involved has to make sure it's safe, long lasting. Those are two of the main things. Safety,
Yeah.
safety is like number one for us, even in the brand promotion stuff. It gets even harder then when we're moving so fast.
Yeah.
There isn't the time to check every code, to check, test every material, test every finish, you know, um, test assemblies, make sure that things are going to hold together when they're used in whatever way they might.
Yeah.
Um, so the cool thing about our mix, I think, or what I really enjoy about it, is that in the experiential, the temporary world, right? These promotions and events, there are far fewer rules and regulations around, like codes,
Hmm.
and so that puts the onus on us to make sure that we're being safe,
Right.
first of all. But it also means that, there's a lot more creativity, or can be more creativity. More things are possible.
Hmm.
And so brands are always trying to, I can't think of the last time we were asked to shoot chicken into space for a permanent environment.
Right.
It's a silly example, but it's like, yeah, hey, to promote a brand, we're gonna do a crazy thing like this. We're gonna, who knows what. You think about all the different stunts that are done for brands. Whereas, the architectural environment, the permanent built environment has, it's something that's gonna probably stay put for a long time. So it's got to follow a more prescribed process.
Hmm.
But the creativity in the temporary world allows us to kind of think outside of the box for the permanent built environment.
Interesting.
Because it's like, oh yeah, we've experimented and invented way more times in this world than usually happens in this world. So we can say, oh, we use that crazy material, to when we shot chicken into space. I wonder if it would perform for this.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
is
cool. So the temporary and the yeah, the non-permanent things kind of give you that experience and that room to experiment.
yeah,
That's cool how that then influences the more permanent things. I hadn't even thought about that, but
yeah.
I mean it makes sense.
It's kind of like what I was talking about earlier with with theater and how and that's I think where where this all, I mean, it's where it all started for me, but in that everything built for a stage play is going to have to perform in some special way, right? It's either got to be moved in and off, on and off stage. So if you've got I used to do a lot of sculpture, and so I did a lot of like stone, marble sculptures for stage plays. Well, a 12-foot tall marble sculpture of a character would weigh thousands and
Right.
thousands of pounds, so they're made out of foam. So it's like everything has to be rethought.
Yeah.
How you make something, like I said before, a chair that's got to break over somebody's back in the fight scene and get reassembled. You got to think totally differently about a chair.
Yeah.
So then when we're making a chair for a library or something, we're going to be like, oh, remember we made that one particular joint was really cool because it was durable,
Hmm.
it could come apart and go back together. And I wonder if we could do that here,
Yeah. Yeah. Because you talk about the library, it just reminds me. There's a place also in Baltimore. There's maybe even two. They had these libraries that had these whole like mini cities almost
Hmm.
for kids. And there's like little houses and a little grocery store and a little garden. This is made me think of that.
Yeah. Yeah, we're creating all
The-
kinds of, there's like, all kinds of different learning modules, kitchen play, and there's a music
yeah.
thing where kids can just make music, and a dance and play cart that's got interactive stuff going on that gets kids to move their bodies, and it's so
Yeah.
cool. It's like it's just one of my favorite projects because, we're making kids' lives better, and we're hopefully, steering them toward reading and learning, and
Right.
that's awesome.
Right. Even if you just make that positive association with a library,
Yeah,
that in of itself I think is really valuable.
totally. Yeah, I mean, it's we've done a bunch of library projects in the last 2 years, and it's really opened my eyes to the vitality of libraries and how many different populations rely on them for different things and how
Mm.
important they are. I before that I was like, yeah, I haven't been to the library in years. I don't really check out books anymore. But there's so much more than that. They're community
Yeah.
gathering spaces. They're access to technology. It's books. It's places for kids to go. I mean, in little Lapine, Oregon here, there's it's a small town. There's not a ton of opportunities for kids, and the library is awesome. They love it. It's right next to I think the high school or the middle school, and kids all go to the library after school. Like, how cool is
Yeah. 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 So I'm curious, I don't know if that you just answered it, but like do you have a favorite project of all time that you worked on?
Oh man, there's so many, and there's so many different aspects to each one that makes them really fun and enjoyable. I mean, the Nike thing, the Kibera environment for the Nike Foundation was really an awesome project and a lot of fun because it was a really courageous move on the part of the foundation, and supporting that risk taking and that courage with the end game of helping young women across the globe that I don't have access to is just like fills my soul to at a deep level. Um, so that was, and filling a conference room, in the Tiger Woods building on Nike campus full of dirt and compost, and you know was a whole crazy challenge that we did safely, and we didn't leave a mark on that building, and and being able to like satisfy all these different needs and concerns that different people in the organization have is super cool. Um, um, boy, what else? These library projects are really neat. They're super long. They're a much longer process, so it's great to be able to really sink into creating environments that are going to last. Kids, we've realized. I mean, we've put stuff into space. We've built environments that go underwater. We did a big photo shoot for Chick-fil-A years ago. We were down in Hollywood in a dive tank building an environment 20 feet under the water. I got a crash course in scuba diving. I never scuba dived, but I had to basically do on-set dressing all day underwater. So learned how to
Wow.
scuba dive real quick and did that. And that was just so fun. It's like, I don't know what other career where I'd go from launching chicken into space to learning how to scuba dive. Uh, but what we've learned is that like even after sending stuff into space and doing stuff underwater and deep in the woods, the most corrosive environment uh, is one where children play.
Mm,
Children
yeah.
test materials and test assemblies and test fabrication techniques harder than anything. So if you got a product or anything you want to test, give it to a bunch of kids because if it's gonna break, and that's what's awesome about kids. They're not playing necessarily by the rules. They're just
Right.
they're just being.
Right. They have no reservations.
No reservations. They're just experiencing, which is
Yeah.
like they're the ultimate, experiencers,
Yeah.
which is so cool.
Yeah.
So it's challenging as a fabricator, but
Right.
it was fun.
Yeah. So I'm curious to ask, like, for somebody who's looking to break into the space, um, of, I guess, fabrication, for lack of a better term,
Yeah.
what do you think are some of the skills that somebody should focus on to kind of, you know, make it into that industry?
Great question. There's so many different skill sets needed in the fabrication world, from you know, project management, just like the managing and organizing of a project, interfacing with clients. So, really good communication skills, um, curiosity, like empathy. Those are big skills to have in our industry. Uh, so those are, so there's one avenue. Um, if you're talking about like actual fabrication, if you want to, use your hands and make stuff, we have woodworkers and sculptors and welders and uh, people that can run a CNC machine. So, CNC programming. So digital fabrication. We've got a great big 3D printer, which requires, knowledge or the ability to learn a pretty complicated machine and how to run it. Um, uh, you know, very entry level stuff, sanding, sanding surfaces, prepping stuff for paint. Like there's all kinds of different skills involved in what we do. So, I think, I mean, what was cool for me in the theater world and building stuff is I got to do kind of everything. I was a woodworker, I was a metal worker, I made weapons, I made fake food, I did sculptures, I like and everything in between. So I got to try a little bit of everything and see which one I liked the most.
Hmm.
And I kind of liked them all. So I guess that's why we're doing what we're doing here.
You
Uh, but
got to scratch all the itches.
yeah, I mean, somebody could, we've had people that were in like the automotive, auto body world, and they learned how to, create, repair shapes,
Hmm.
and do like auto body work, which is highly specialized, but it's got really similar skill sets, to
Hmm.
doing a large sculpture. I mean, it can be
Right.
sculpture work,
Right.
mechanical aspects, if we're making something that's automated, that's got to move, with hydraulics or pneumatics or mechanical gearing, there's all that kind of automation stuff. Uh, a person could go to college or community college or just take classes in welding or again woodwork or sculpture. Uh, so many different kind of point. And then from there, you could, like, when we get resumes from folks, we're like, we try to look at how well-rounded they are,
Mm.
or if there's a particular skill set that they're really good at that we really need. Uh, but yeah, I think people that work in our or have worked in our organization have come from so many different backgrounds and trades. Uh, for a long time, it was a lot of people who were in the theater business. Again, because it's you learn how to support a creative concept and a team that has an agenda. You got real deadlines. And that's the thing about theater that I really value is that those tickets are sold for opening night.
Right.
No moving that deadline. That's one of the other differences between the the temporary environment and the permanent environment. Permanent environment, building of a new building. So often those openings get pushed. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
not quite ready. Got a delay. There's a material shortage. Can't get,
Right.
can't get gypsum for the concrete, so the concrete guys are slow, and so that pushes the whole thing back. When you've got either a product launch or a brand promotion that's set for a day, or a photo shoot or a video shoot, or a stage play, or a music festival, months, if not years ahead of time, that date is set
Right.
and you can't miss it.
Yeah.
That's what I learned in theater, was how to hit a deadline.
Mm. Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
that takes some real skill when you're trying to solve a problem that you don't know the answer to. Like, okay, what I do know is I got to solve it by X date.
Yeah.
That's where some
Yeah.
of that intuition and process comes in, we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. I can't believe I forgot to ask you about this. You mentioned it right when I realized I forgot to ask you about it. It's when you brought it up. Is about that 3D printer, because I saw on your website you guys had 3D printed like the grill of a truck, right? Something like
Yeah.
it was like the
Yeah, it's a large format 3D printer, so it can
is
print.
it the largest one out there? Like how big is it?
It's darn big. I mean, it's the whole machine, would fill my office here, so the machine
Wow.
itself is, I don't know, 7 feet tall by 10 feet wide by about 8 feet deep or something like that. It can
Wow.
print an object that's roughly 4 feet by 5 feet by 6 feet.
Hmm.
And it's a little bit different from what a lot of people think of when they think of 3D printers, like an SLA or an FDM printer, in that it's really good at printing a hollow shell. It's using a gel, a photopolymeric gel that it's basically like, a cake decorator, that bag where you
Hmm.
squeeze frosting out of a nozzle. It's like a fancy computer numeric controlled cake decorator. And
Okay.
it's exuding a thin bead of gel out of a nozzle that has a UV light that hits it as soon as it pushes it out of the nozzle, and it cools
Okay.
it right as it touches the object. So it's building up layers to create a shell, and it's good at creating shells. It's not good for creating like machine parts, solid objects.
Yeah.
We got
Yeah.
it because we were doing a lot of foam sculpting, like I talked about, way back in my theater days, carving stuff out of styrofoam. We were still doing a lot of that, and other foams, high density polyurethane foams, which is a subtractive process where you're
Hmm.
taking a big block of material and carving away what's not necessary until you get the object, and it's super wasteful. So, you're carving away 30 to 70% of a material
Yeah.
to get that object. The 3D printing is additive. Additive manufacturing is one of the headings, that it falls under. And so it's printing only what is needed. So it's way more uh, sustainable. It's way more ecologically sound than carving away foam. So that's why we got it, was to replace a lot of that subtractive foam sculpting that we were doing.
Hmm.
And it's
Interesting.
cool. It's highly accurate, and it's, quick, and you can kind of set it and walk away. In theory, it's not
Yeah.
always that simple, but
Yeah. It's fast. It's I mean, relatively speaking.
relative to the time that it takes to hand sculpt something, or even, whether it's, the other way things like that are done now is with CNC machining, still
Yeah.
subtractive, a 5-axis or a robotic milling machine that is carving away. Um, I, I haven't, put them, neck and neck, and checked them, but I think it is faster than that. Excuse me, and there's not the waste.
So what kind of things are you guys using it for?
We've made all kinds of crazy things with it. They're not all right here, but we did that large truck grill. So that was a case where a design company was designing a new, big rig truck body. Or I think mostly they were redesigning the grill because apparently, I didn't know this before, but what distinguishes one truck brand from another is the grill. You know,
Hmm.
on the highway, a Kenworth looks like a Peterbilt, looks like a, whatever. They're all pretty much
Yeah.
the same, but it's the grill that is this unique distinguishing feature. So they
Uh-huh.
developed a new truck, a hydrogen electric in-town delivery truck, and for a trade show and a video shoot, they needed the grill because they were, you know, eventually when they launch the product and they're in production making these things, those grills will get made with like an injection molding process. So they'll make molds and they get probably injection molded. Well, the process to create those molds takes a lot of time and a lot of money. They're very expensive because they got to last. They're going to make hundreds or thousands off of that. So they needed for the promotion of the new truck, they were producing a video, right, that would go out on social with the truck driving down the road. Hey, here's the new truck and here's what it looks like. So they needed a grill for that video. And then it turns out they needed another grill for a truck that was going to be in Vegas at the trade show for the launch of this new product.
Hmm.
So we printed it. The design team had made the digital models. They'd all seen renders and they had actual 3D files of this thing. But it was going to take a year to get and $1 million or something to get the injection mold tooling made. So we printed it, and we were able to 3D print a grill in about, I don't know, 2, 3 days, and then it required a lot of handwork, a lot of automotive body work, to
Hmm.
smooth it out and sand and prime and paint, and that's a lengthy process. And we
Yeah.
had a exact replica of what the grill would look like. It's not going to last
Right.
forever, but it was perfect for the video
The
shoot.
display and
Yeah, for the display.
oh, very cool.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, I dabble in 3D printing. I have my printer right here. Mine's not nearly as big.
yeah,
Mine fits on a desktop.
yeah. There's printers from that size up to, they're making buildings out of 3D printers now that are
Yeah, yeah.
basically
It's a similar. The buildings kind of is a similar process. It's with concrete, but
with
same kind of
concrete.
idea of
That's right.
it's
Yeah,
extruding. It's all the same principle, right? It's all. I mean, the FDM printers doing the same thing. Also, it's heating up plastic, melting it, and then extruding it.
extruding it
You
and
know.
it solidifies. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
the big concrete ones are very similar to this. Yeah.
Did you see there's also somebody had made a glass one. Did you ever see that one?
I haven't seen it yet, but
It wasn't. It was not like not commercially available. It was more like one of these like science and design hybrids. But it was like
yeah,
it was interesting. There's I think there's in Germany I think there's a whole additive manufacturing expo
yeah.
where they just show off
Which would be amazing.
printers.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
like I follow somebody on Instagram who their whole page is 3D printing, and like she was showing like there's this one printer you literally could stand inside of, and you print furniture and
That's what
it
this looks
really.
like. Yeah, I could go stand inside it and we could do this interview inside there.
Did you guys have it made custom for you or you bought it from a
No,
company?
no, we bought it from a company. It's made by a company called Massivit. Um,
Uh-huh.
they're one of several that make this size and style of printer. And yeah, again, it has largely replaced the foam sculpting that we're doing. There are times
Interesting.
when, subtractive foam makes more sense for us.
Do you find it to be as durable or
It depends. It depends on the foam in the subtractive foam case, and it depends largely on the finishing on two things with this machine. The type of gel that is used. It's a proprietary gel, and they've got a couple different types. um, the more standard gel does require some sort of reinforcement, whether that be fiberglass or a sprayed-on coating. We're doing for the library project I was talking about, we're making indoor like play structure building blocks that are these giant, not giant, but big, big furniture size upholstered blocks, very organic shaped. And we're 3D printing the core that the upholstery gets wrapped on. So we print it, we fill it with expanding foam, we do a quick fiberglass wrap on it, and that adds the durability and the weight that we wanted. And then it gets upholstered like a sofa would get upholstered,
Yeah.
basically. Um,
Oh, very cool.
yeah, and it's just great because they're such challenging shapes to when we first saw them from the design team, we're like, those are going to be really hard to make out of wood. They're going to be almost impossible to make out of metal, and very expensive and really time consuming. Let's just print them.
Yeah. That's really cool. Huh. It's the whole 3D printing industry is really fascinating, and
Super
I
cool.
think we're only scratching the surface of
Oh,
what's possible with
yeah,
it.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I saw recently there was a company that made a tabletop SLS printer.
Mm-hmm.
It was like 3 feet tall, not even 2 feet tall, maybe.
Yeah,
It like literally fits on your desktop.
yeah.
And then and they did a Kickstarter campaign. It was very successful. And then they ended up getting acquired by Formlabs. I don't know if you're familiar with
Sure.
their printers.
We've got a machine
Yeah,
of theirs, or a couple machines of theirs. Yeah,
yeah. So they bought this company.
cool.
Um, yeah, 'cause it's very cool to like because for the longest time, if you want an SLS printer, you're talking about you had to be in with a studio because they were tens of thousands of dollars,
Yeah,
and this company made it for like maybe $2,000. I think it was even less than 2,000. So like really consumer, accessible. I think they're very exciting things coming in that whole 3D printing space.
yeah, absolutely. Very, very exciting.
Yeah, it's
Even,
super cool.
even for a Luddite like me who's used to just making stuff with my hands, I still and people have concern about is it going to replace the human being in the making process? And yeah, in some things, I think it is. Uh,
Yeah.
and
In the same way that the tractor, or whatever, or excavator replaced people digging pits with a shovel.
with a shovel and horses and yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
So
No, absolutely.
yeah,
One other project I'm really curious to ask you about, is on your website is the Rivendell wedding that you guys did.
yeah. So that was a pretty unique project in that it was for our client, the person who came to us as a designer, essentially. And he had a client who who was about to be married. He and his fiance wanted to get married. In their family has a sizable chunk of property. A couple houses that surround some natural areas. Forested lands, and so they wanted to do a couple things. They wanted to get married in their on their property, and they're in the forest. And they're both big J.R.R. Tolkien fans, and so their big dream was to get married in Rivendell. Uh,
Hmm.
and they had to do it, had to have the wedding. They were a little concerned. His father was elderly, and they weren't sure how much time he had left. In Oregon, you typically don't have an outdoor event until after July when
Hmm.
it'll reliably stop raining. But they were really concerned about making sure that Dad could experience this, and so we had to have the event in April in the rainy season. And yeah, they wanted Rivendell, basically a elfin palace, in the deep in the woods, about a quarter mile from any road, way down in the forest. Uh, so we set to designing a Rivendell-like temporary event structure that was deep in the forest. We couldn't get any vehicles down there. We basically every piece of material had to be hand delivered down a 30-inch wide trail. We started in, I don't know, December, January, so in the winter, in the rain,
Wow.
stick by stick, you know, challenge with permitting, because we couldn't permit it as a long-lasting structure because it would have taken too long.
Hmm.
And there were some challenges with the area. So the safe and legal way to do it was as a temporary event structure, um, that was really there just for that purpose. Uh,
Hmm.
and it was on a hillside that had known historically to have mudslides and you know amongst alder trees that break in the wind. I mean, there are
Oh man.
a lot of unique challenges to it.
Yeah.
Again, it's that great fun project for us that had a lot of interesting challenges, um, that we had to navigate.
Definitely memorable.
Memorable. Yeah, they got to, and again, it's like we got to make their dreams come true,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
which is quite an honor,
Yeah.
to do that for
Definitely.
somebody. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. It was such a pleasure.
Yeah.
Where can everybody find you and all your work and the social media and all that?
Yeah, Figure Plant is the name of the company, so figureplant.com is where the website is. Instagram, and Facebook and all those things at Figure Plant, FIGUREPLANT. We're I think the only one. So yeah, that's where they can find us. All of our contact info is on there. So yeah, if people have any questions or curiosities, that's how to find us.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Moshe, my pleasure. Yeah, it's been a great conversation, and yeah, I hope we inspire some folks in this industry.
I hope so too.
It's pretty fun.
Yeah. Take care.
Awesome. You too.